Byrum Brown gets more important every single day.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Lindsay, Crosby of the barn, auburn.com, as well as other places, hanging out with us. We all have questions about Auburn basketball. How are we at this point, and what do we do now? We take stabs at that, as well as an interesting note about Auburn releasing their rosters. Is it interesting or is it important? But we got to start with the most important thing of all, and that is Byrum Brown. And we'll talk more about the basketball stuff in a second, like we mentioned, but I do think with Auburn and a spot to where they're unlikely to make the tournament at this point and the collapse that we've seen, we talked about this 7 days ago, Lindsay, how basketball was kind of this oasis in the offseason for Auburn fans to where we was like, okay, football's underachieved, basketball's overachieving. This is something we can hold on to. And the first year of Stephen Pearl has not gone that way. And I think with the addition of Byrum Brown and the hope of Byrum Brown, and I think Auburn's messaging and Alex Golesh bringing Byrum Brown with him anytime he's speaking somewhere publicly at all these Auburn clubs, I think it's only adding fuel to the fire. Byrum Brown has become the most important Auburn player, I think, in the last 10 years.
One, I want to say to those fans who are sad that basketball is the way it is, you have another oasis in baseball, which Thompson would love your support. But yeah, no, this is it. Everything revolves around football. We said that last week. That's how it works at an SEC school. And you brought in a lot of talent, you lost a lot of talent, whatever. But I don't want to say it doesn't work, but it's a lot harder to see it working if Byrum Brown is not on the field every single play. And so you're not, unlike a lot of transfer situations in the past, you're not banking on a guy living up to the promise that he's shown. He's done that. He's a proven performer. Yeah. You're just banking that he can make the adjustment to a higher level of competition with a coach who has successfully coached this offense at a higher level of competition. So less questions. But if he doesn't work out, you're in trouble, because Auburn football is in a slump that they have not been in a long time. And right now, he is really the only player that you added to the roster that has any hope of single-handedly carrying you to the promised land of a winning record again.
Right. Yeah. No, I think all that's on his shoulders. And I think everyone in that building is comfortable with him carrying that load. I mean, if you think back to, the previous quarterbacks that have been brought in, and I mean, we could even let's go post Jarrett Stidham, because I think there were decent expectations placed on Jarrett Stidham. But after that, when Bo Nix comes in, there were a lot of folks, myself included, that expected Joey Gatewood to be the next guy. Okay. All right. And then, after Bo leaves, Harsin kind of put everybody in a tough spot. I don't think anybody was expecting, TJ Finley or Zach Calzada to, take Auburn to the college football playoff.
Right.
But then even when Hugh Freeze brought in Peyton Thorne, there was still some sort of, faith and backup quarterback play when, there was some back and forth there with Robbie Ashford.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I don't think there was this rush to win right away with Hugh Freeze. It was, we're going to build this the right way. We're going to bring in talent and give us 3 years.
Yeah, we understood where the program was, I think, too, as a program and how down it was. That was part of the reason for the patience.
Right. And then, with Peyton, bringing Peyton back, they tried to make him less important. And then with Jackson, they tried to make it everything but the quarterback. And obviously that approach didn't work. But that's not what this is. Alex Golesh is like, yeah, my offense was really good, and it's been good at other places, but like Byrum was the USF offense last year.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Let's bring all of this here and let's see if it translates. So to me, I think Byrum Brown is the most important addition to the Auburn football program that we've seen in a long, long time.
I mean, you've had big recruits that signaled different things, right? Like you've won recruiting battles against like Alabama and stuff. And so you've had guys that came in. It was a big deal that you won this recruitment, you brought this guy in. But to your point, I don't think there was an expectation of a certain level of wins and losses from winning that recruiting battle. Whereas with Byrum Brown, it is very clearly it has to translate in wins. Like it's not a moral victory thing, right? It's not a we're building the program the right way thing. This is I'm bringing this quarterback in. I am paying for this quarterback.
Yeah.
Because we believe that with him, we are going to be able to win football games. And so I do think it's a lot easier for us to judge at the end of the day how successful the transfer was because we're looking at wins and losses. Whereas if you're looking at winning the recruitment for Cam Coleman or something, you're talking about recruiting momentum in the state versus Alabama and all that nebulous stuff. This will have direct measurable outcomes, but the cost of like, say, not getting the Cam Coleman recruitment, not winning that recruitment wasn't going to be incredibly severe. The cost of Byrum Brown not working out will be very visible, very felt, and very bad. It's not going to cost Alex Golesh's job, a brand new hire, but it definitely would start off his tenure the wrong foot if Brown is healthy and they still can't make it happen.
Yeah. And it also, I mean, to strengthen your argument, I mean, I think in real time, I would have put the importance of Cam Coleman higher, but now in retrospect, it's like, well,
he can transfer out anyway. Yeah.
Like, and what did he win? What did he win?
I think he won like an SEC Player of the Week thing one time, maybe, but the team didn't win.
Yeah.
Because like, it's even if you compare this to other quarterbacks, right? Like you could say, okay, the Peyton Thorne transfer in is probably the next most consequential simply because you knew you were going to win the recruitment of Bo Nix. Like, come on, it's Bo Nix. You knew you were going to get that.
Sure.
It's just and here's the thing: there's not really any other great options behind Byrum Brown. It's not like when Peyton Thorne came in, we all said, yeah, Peyton Thorne's going to be the starter, but you could make cases for other guys behind him. You're not doing that behind Byrum Brown. There's zero question here. He is brought in to lead the offense. He's going to be a team captain in year one. And if it doesn't work out, it's going to be awkward.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear what the plan is. I've said this since Alex Golesh was hired. I love that there is a clear plan. They are executing the plan. You can have your opinion on the plan. Is it going to work? Is it not? We'll see. That's going to work itself out. I love that there is a clear plan and they're following it, and we'll see what it looks like. And obviously Byrum Brown is a massive, massive part of that plan. When you look at the roster that Auburn released late last week, there's a few interesting notes, or at least I think it's interesting. Or is it important? Let's discuss that next, right here on Locked on Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. And right now, FanDuel realizes that college basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want. You can mix spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see the slate playing out. And you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up that potential play out. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Today's show also brought to you by our friends and Indeed. Lindsay, I, for one, cannot imagine hiring someone for my small business unless it's through Indeed.
I have a small business that does Braves today. We hired somebody to help out with the website, and Indeed was the best way to do that. It was so incredibly simple to get Taylor on board.
Yep. Indeed sponsored jobs helps you reach people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. You're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. So all listeners of the show can get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Need to hire? That's a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Want to encourage you to head over to lockedonauburn.supercast.com to join our Everydayer Club. If you hate interruptions but love this show, check it out. You can get access to an ad-free audio feed right there. Pardon my voice. I'm fighting through this one, Lindsay Crosby. Oof. So when you look at Auburn's roster that was released late last week, there's 3 10s and there's 3 19s. And I think they're both related to each other. And I think one is important, could be important. I think there's an argument for it. And one is interesting.
Okay.
There are 3 number 10s. Walter Mathis Jr., fine, great.
Defensive lineman, yeah.
Yep. The other 2 are on offense. One is Tristan Tia, who we assume will win the quarterback 2 job, which is important. That is an important job, especially when you have a mobile quarterback like Byrum Brown. Byrum also missed a ton of time 2 seasons ago. Your backup quarterback does matter in the Southeastern Conference.
1 snap away from being on the field.
Always 1 snap away. And then Duke Smith is the other number 10. And I'm really trying not to read too much into this. And I want you to kind of talk me off the ledge and be like, Zach, it's spring, not even spring yet. They've got plenty of time to change this if this is actually is relevant. But I do think it's a little odd because I think a lot of folks are expecting Duke Smith to take that big step forward athletically and physically. He's certainly capable of doing it. And that's when you see your biggest jump from your freshman year to your sophomore year. And that's what we're seeing with Duke Smith. And when you have a guy that we're all expecting to at least crack the rotation or have a chance to crack the rotation, and your backup quarterback, who's always 1 play away, wearing the same number, is that saying something? Or is this just, no, these are the numbers they're going to wear for spring and they can change them after?
I was about to say, I think with Tia specifically, this may be a situation where they're going to change the numbers later. If you look at what he wore at Oregon State, he's worn number 3 and number 10. Number 3 is right now Lachlan Hewlett, the freshman quarterback that was committed to USF under Golesh, who flipped his commitment here. And then 10 clearly is Duke Smith.
No, Hewlett was at USF. He transferred.
I'm sorry. That's right. I'm sorry. Thank
Reese
you.
Brush, who we'll talk about in a second, was
that's how I was getting it backwards. There you go.
Yep.
And so it's entirely possible that Tia is, I'm going to wear 10 during spring, and then I'm going to move to something else. Or maybe Duke Smith is going to move to something else.
So the 310 thing is interesting, and it's pretty similar to the 319s that we were seeing on the roster. Reese Brush, who you just mentioned, Jake Johnson, who I think will be the starting tight end.
Yep.
And Scrap Richardson, who's the lone defender of the 19s. We'll see how much he plays. There's differing opinions on if he can crack the rotation at defensive back. But with Reese, I don't think anybody's expecting Reese Brush to play. The freshman coming in, whatever. Probably the 4th quarterback in the room. And then Jake Johnson's your starting tight end. It's like, okay, if there's a situation where Reese has to come in, you either switch out Jake Johnson's jersey or you don't put him in, or in situations where Brush would play, if Johnson is a starting tight end, he's probably done anyway because it's all going to be backups in there.
Yeah.
So that would make sense. But when you look at 10 does not make sense for that reason.
Yeah. And if you were to try to change one of the guys at 10, either Tia or Smith. If I'm doing this right, other than that 0, I think the next option you have is something in the 20s. I want to say it's something like 20, like 27.
Now, are you talking about changing Duke Smith's number or Tristan Tia changing his number?
Either one. I mean, unless you go with that 0 thing, because you're not going to use 2, you're not going to use 7. There's so many options that just Auburn's not going to give those numbers out. And so it's like 27, you have a defensive player, but no offensive player. 28, you have a defensive player, but no offensive player. But like 26, you're doubled up. 25 is offense. 24, you're doubled up. 23, you're doubled up. Just it goes 22, you're doubled up. 21, you're doubled up. I guess 20 would be open too. There is a defensive 20.
Yeah, but QB can't wear 20, right? And then like if you look at the 80s, is there an option in the 80s for
actually, you know what?
There's not an 88.
There's not an 88, which I feel like you should make a tight end move to 88 because that feels like a big guy number.
Yeah. And Eccles being, the tight end from USF, Eccles being number one is kind of wild to me.
Maybe that's what they're gonna switch. I have a theory that number 1 on offense should always be your fastest dude. It just feels like that's a fast number. Maybe it's me remembering Percy Harvin, but I feel like number 1 should be your fastest player on the field.
Yeah.
So maybe you move Eccles to 88 and then you give somebody else 1. Who's the fastest receiver we have? You put him at number 1.
Yeah.
I'm guessing Bryce Kane is it right now, but
Bryce Kane's fast, Singleton's fast, Koger's fast. Yeah, let them all race. Winner gets to be number 1.
Yeah, that's not going to end poorly at all for us. Why?
No, I do think at quarterback, like I think you can move Tia to 12, like Brady Marquise, the freshman. Like I don't think he's going to play much this year. How much is Corey Pettigrew, the transfer from South Florida? How much is he going to play?
14, I wasn't thinking about moving him there.
14 Shamar Arnaud and Hudson Cock. Neither of those guys play offense. So
maybe that's going to be something you do. Yeah, maybe that's going to be something you do.
So 14 is an option.
You just double up or triple up at another number. In this case, one that either doesn't have an offensive player or one that's not going to have somebody that gets into the game a lot.
Yeah. Man, name somebody who has better number 17s than us, though. Goodness gracious. With Atkins and Byrum. Goodness gracious. All right. So, yeah, I just thought that would be an interesting discussion. Probably doesn't mean anything. It's going to be very easy to move numbers around, but I do think that's interesting. A guy who's one play away being the same number as a guy who we think can take a big step forward in the receiver room. Yes, Lindsay Crosby.
Buffalo Bills.
2 of them?
No, but they have Josh Allen. Like it's probably a better number 17 at the end of the day.
The thought exercise, who has 2 17s?
Who in college has 2 17s? Baseball kind of gets this. Shohei Ohtani wears 17, and he's both a hitter and a pitcher.
I'd rather have Byrum Brown and Xavier Atkins.
Yes, I know that's. I'd rather Auburn football also have Xavier Atkins and Byrum Brown than Shohei Ohtani.
But if you gave me the opportunity to put Shohei Ohtani on Butch Thompson's team,
oh my God,
I'd really think about it.
That'd be a ton of fun.
He would ruin the sport for a year. All right. Let's jump back into the hoops questions because there are a ton of questions. That's next, right here on Locked on Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. All right, final few minutes on today's edition of Locked on Auburn. Brutal game against Ole Miss as Auburn basketball lost to, arguably the worst team in the SEC. And now it kind of looks like Auburn right now is the worst team in the SEC. They play against a struggling LSU team Tuesday night. Late tip. I think it's 9:00 our time, which is absurd.
Gross.
And ridiculous. Now, maybe not as absurd because who's going to want to watch this game anyway between these two teams?
Baseball people can finish up versus Samford and then just flip on LSU.
There you go.
They get at 6.
That probably starts at 6. Yeah. So,
6, yeah.
Man, it's such a complex situation. Nobody is happy with how this season has gone. Do I think Steven has done a great job this year? No, I don't. Do I think the roster was built to win a championship? No, I don't. Do I think culturally that these guys have bought in? No, I don't. But they still underachieved. And with what Bruce Pearl built, there is no reason to miss the tournament. With Auburn having one of the highest paid and most supported programs in the SEC, one of the highest paid rosters in the SEC, you should not be losing to schools like Ole Miss, like Oklahoma. I mean, the list goes on and on. Auburn has just dropped the ball over and over and over again. And it's a complex situation. For all the folks that are saying fire Stephen Pearl, look, I get the frustration. I get where you're coming from. And in a perfect situation, maybe that would happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I think there's an argument for it. But let me be clear. I don't think it's going to happen. And so when you look at it, then it's like, all right, well, what does the future look like? Reportedly, they're moving in to hire a GM that'll help with personnel, take something out of Steven's hands. Okay, great. And when you couple that with the revenue and the NIL that's about to open up when the portal opens, I think a lot of these guys are going to obviously leave because of graduation. And I also think a lot of these guys are just going to portal just because I do think a fresh start is needed on this roster. It's an awful situation. I think it's multifaceted. I don't think it's all on Steven. I don't think it's all on the players. I think it's a lot of bad happening and it just didn't work. But the degree of it not working, I do think is on Steven. There's no reason to miss the tournament with the backing that this program has.
Now, from a from a player perspective, if I remember right, the only guy you brought back was like your 6th man last year. Like,
right?
It was a complete reconstruction of the roster. But I do think to that point, you should at least be able to make the tournament as a number 7 seed or something like that. The thing that gets me, and I was able to watch some of this game when I finished all my baseball stuff yesterday or Saturday. Ole Miss not only won this game, but like that's the most points they've scored in regulation in over a month. That's the fewest points they've allowed in the entire month of February. Like, not only did they win, they looked as good as they've looked in a month when they did it. And it's like, I mean, Auburn not being Auburn. There's a lot of issues there. I think you kind of touched on. It's a perfect storm of everything going wrong. The culture stuff with swapping coaches, the inexperience of a brand new coach, the defense just being terrible, which has not really been a thing that it was under Bruce. The offense that just can't seemingly be consistent and get it together. It's very inconsistent. But they're also not helping themselves. And it's just, I mean, quad 3 loss here. It's the first time Auburn's had a quad 3 loss in a couple of years, I think.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks. What are your opinions of the Keyshawn Murphy thing? So when Daryl and I were live, we didn't see this. I saw this when I was kind of reading what Steven said after this. But I thought they were just changing the lineup because they needed to. Like, they needed to just try something, but that's not what happened. Sounds like he was 20 minutes late to a film session or practice, and so this was his punishment, which I'm fine with punishing him. But at this point in the season, and an upperclassman being 20 minutes late, this is a culture that has trended and grown this direction over the last few weeks, right? I mean, we saw them, we saw him bench Keyshawn Hall, and now this has happened. There's been stuff happening, with Caden Magwood, which Auburn fans want to see him despite all of that happening. And this is the culture that is happening. Now, how much of that is these guys, like these players thought they were going to play for Bruce and they're frustrated? I don't know. But regardless, the current version of this culture is not good. I don't have an issue with Steven issuing these suspensions or issuing these punishments. I don't have an issue with that at all. You can't let those players run your program.
Yeah.
But that's the part of it where I do think the anti-Steven, the folks that want to fire Steven right away should take a breath and say, well, these guys didn't sign up to play for Steven. And so when they're not giving Steven, 100%, what does that look like? To me, I think that's the part where I'm like, I kind of feel for Steven to some extent. Now, has Steven been the greatest coach on the court? No, I don't think so. I think he goes too long without calling timeouts. And I think there's times where this team just does not seem like they're the smartest team when it comes to, basketball IQ and situational awareness and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, that's why I think this has gotten so bad so quick, is there's a lot of bad things happening at once. And so how many of those things go away if they do choose to blow up the roster and then rebuild things?
I think Stephen bringing in his own guys definitely helps. I mean, the way that whole situation ended, no player has had an opportunity to decide, hey, this is not what I signed up for. I want out, right? Given the timing of when it happened, right before the season and everything, and how, if you try to transfer right then, I mean, you're not going to get to play and all of that stuff. This isn't his roster. This is almost like a year zero for Steven, right? You're getting a lot of on the job training. The bad part is it came at our expense, right? Like the fans had to watch this team be bad. But I like to think that when he has a full offseason to recruit his own roster, guys who are signing up to play for him, not play for his legendary father.
Yeah.
I do think that's going to look different. And I do think that's the main reason why you're going to see Steven Pearl back next year. Simply because a lot of the issues here, did he make them better? No. But are they his fault? Also, no. And I think that's going to be kind of important. And I think that's what John Cohen's going to look at when he looks back at this and says, hey, do we need to make a move or not in basketball? I don't think he will. And I think that's why.
Yeah. I get being frustrated. I get being unhappy, and the product on the court has not been good enough. We all agree on that. So we'll see what John Cohen and Auburn leadership's direction of this is moving forward. We'll probably know in a few weeks. So we'll see what happens with all that. Lindsay, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
I'm on social media at Crosby Baseball, the Auburn baseball stuff, thebarnauburn.com, and our live recaps. We have something from yesterday from Game 3 versus Nebraska. And the Atlanta Braves stuff, bravestoday.com and the Braves Today podcast.
Yes. And I guess we got to discuss what we'll do with Tuesday's coverage. We got to figure that out. But yes, make sure you're subscribed either on YouTube or on audio to never miss any of our instant game recaps as well. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked on Auburn.